Well, hello everyone. Most of you probably know that I'm taking over, not taking over all the time, but taking over just for this evening's of ETA. And I want to say a big thank you to ETA for giving me this opportunity to be host tonight. And I'm getting some wonderful highs, which I'll be saying highs throughout this evening. So I can see Carol, I can see Gillian, I can see my wonderful friend, the Ghost Lady, Nanny Lynn, Dream Witch, whatever you call her. She goes under loads of different names. Nanny Lynn is what she tends to be known as now. But I'm really lucky because I've got two absolutely fantastic guests along tonight. Lorien, I do know. I'm usually being interviewed by Lorien, and it's on the fantastic YouTube channel, The Ghost Voice. Do check that out as well. Lorien writes the Ghost Book, is a fantastic resource website, and also Ale Haunts, if I'm saying that completely right. Courtney, who's smiling away, and she's written for the Feminine Macabre, which we'll know a little bit more about that later. Fantastic book, designed, written in such a way to readjust the balance, because there's lots of, throughout history, female figures within the occult, the paranormal, folklore that have got missed throughout history. So it's to talk about that and be slightly less masculine. So this is going to be really fascinating to know. And she also has a fantastic Instagram page called The Ghoul Guide. So we're going to be asking that. So does anyone want to put their hand up first and go, yes, I shall answer the questions first? So whose hand's going up first that wants to ask? Answer questions.
Go on then.
All right, wonderful. So Lorien, I've read on your website that unlike some people who've had like a paranormal experience as a child, you didn't have that, but always had a fascination in ghosts and going to the library and picking up the ghost books.
That's right.
So tell me a little bit more about this interest, and was there a particular story that you were told as a child or something on television that really grabbed your interest?
Yeah, no, which to me makes me wonder why I had such an interest from such a young age. I think it's probably maybe the same with you, Courtney. We were kind of, well, I was not exposed, but allowed to watch things that I perhaps wouldn't let my girls watch at the age that I was, if that makes sense. Not by my parents, but I think like my auntie would let me, oh yeah, you can watch that spooky thing or whatever. So maybe I was just subjected to it a bit more of a young age. I don't know, but I just had the fascination, and that it kind of interests me why I had that when I didn't have a particularly spooky experience or you know. And I remember staying one time we were staying in a little fisherman's cottage in Cornwall. I think my brother was born, so I must have been about 9, 10, I think, probably about 9. And I just remember really disliking a bedroom. No particular reason, don't recall seeing anything in that room, but I just had the feeling that I didn't like it in there. And I used to talk in my sleep quite a lot as a youngster. I don't think, well, apparently I was the other night, but I don't think I do it regularly as much. But my mum said she came in and I was sitting up with my eyes open, talking, asleep, but it was in that state. And I think she said at this time I was laughing, and she asked what I was laughing about, and I said that funny little man in the corner. I've got no recollection of that, and I don't know if I was dreaming or if there was something there and I was in some kind of other state. I don't know, but no, that fascinates me more that I didn't have a particular story. You know, a lot of people see like a deceased relative, a granddad, that kind of story. I didn't have any of that, so I'm not sure, but it's always been there.
I've just seen Andy down the bottom, and I was going to wait until there was a really nice pause that I could introduce Andy in. And before I could do that, Andy's disappeared. So Andy, if you are watching, please go back on and I will introduce you, because some people will be watching this saying, who's this guy just popped up here just a second ago? So Courtney, you happy to say about your first interest into the paranormal? And you also do paranormal tourism or dark tourism. So you can say a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so the paranormal has always just been this like weird underlying constant in my life. When I was little, probably around like the age of 6 or 7, I saw a face at the bottom of my window in my childhood bedroom in the middle of the night. Freaked me out. There was no way anyone could get up there. And basically, it kind of just sparked this interest to me. And when I was little, we started going around cemeteries. My grandparents lived around cemeteries, and there was one at the bottom of my street. So that kind of all just drew me in. And when the paranormal TV shows started coming up, that's what really grabbed my interest, and like what really showed me that like, hey, like other people are doing this, like this is something you can do. So I kind of got into that. And then when COVID happened, I kind of turned the Ghoul Guide into a passion project. I had this idea. I always loved traveling. I loved the paranormal. I would always take random drives and end up at haunted locations near me. So I kind of just had this thoughts like, what if I could find them together? And oh no, this sounds not good. So I kind of had this just kind of like idea, and I just jumped on it. But yeah, I guess that's like my origin story with it. And so it's just been this like weird underlying constant that I kind of just am going all in right now.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. So would you say that if it wasn't for COVID, although it's been absolutely dreadful for all of us, that actually was a springboard for you to really do your Instagram and really get it out there?
Yeah, I'd say so. It kind of helped me like put everything on the back burner. In my day job, I am a teacher aide for kids with special needs. So during the school year, I kind of go all in with that. I only really used to go to like shows and concerts. I never like really dived into the paranormal because no one would ever go with me. And thanks to COVID, it kind of just let me like settle down and like show me that's like I don't need other people to like go with me on these things. I can just go. So
Yeah.
So I did that, and I kind of just like gained a whole group of friends that like wants to do this. So now I'm all in.
Fantastic. Now, Lorien, is Andy? Have you managed to? I don't know if you managed to message him at all. Is he going to pop back on in a second, or is that it?
No, he said he should be back in about 5. Paul said he'd be on about 9, so they'll be here.
Excellent. When he does pop up this time, just so people know, I will pop him up straight away. But I just wanted to first time just kind of introduce him, really. So. Also, as well, Lorien, which we didn't touch on, you've been involved with organising events, and I think as well, Courtney, we were talking about earlier. You've both been involved in organising in events, and we'd like to say how you both got into that, and some of your most favourite events that you've put on. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go first, Lorien?
Yeah, I've never actually organised an event. When I first set up my website, the Ghost Book, in 2013, I think it was more a project of passion. And then I'd had my eldest daughter at that point. She was a baby. And I thought, how can I make this work for me so that I can be at home with her rather than... I was in retail at the time. And I thought, I don't want to be working Christmas Eve and Boxing Day and not be there. So I thought I need to do something that I can make a little bit of money from, and means that I can be at home as she grows up, etc. So that's when I kind of got into advertising events for companies that run the events in the UK. So that's how the Ghost Book grew. I was advertising the events. So I haven't actually ever hosted any. I don't think I'd dare. But also, people have said to me in the past, would you set up your own company or something? I think no, leave that to the people who know what they're doing. I have organised events privately for friends and things. Like I saw you mention on the introduction, the written introduction about me doing Derby Gaol. That was more getting a group of friends together and saying, let's go here, and sorting that out as opposed to a public event. So kind of, I've been on plenty myself, public events, but never ran any, so to speak.
Wonderful. And before we get Courtney's views on that, I just wanted to give a few mentions out. So we got Soldier watching, Debs is watching. Gillian, I might have mentioned before, but she's watching. Steve's watching. Dee's watching. Patricia, Michelle, Claire. There's a couple of Claires. And there's some silent watchers. Angela's watching. BNN Paranormal. Another Steve. Anne. If I missed anybody, I'm really Sanumba. I hope you're getting your name right. I do apologise if I'm not. Kelly's watching. 2 Kellys. Joe. There's plenty of people watching. So if I've missed anybody, I do apologise. So Courtney, your events, and you said you've got one coming up soon with Amanda, who wrote The Feminine Macabre. So maybe it might be a nice introduction to The Feminine Macabre, your story that's in it, and also as well, you're going to be coming in volume 3 as well, which is hugely exciting. And then maybe you could mention a little bit about what you're going to be doing with Amanda coming up soon.
Yeah. So I really don't book events like for public. I kind of just do private. So I grab whoever wants to come and check out a spooky location with me. The events that I do jump on, they are for Haunted Nights. It's my friend's event company. So he started it like fresh right before COVID hit, and it's kind of just taken off. So we've gone to places like Madison Seminary, Fairfield County Infirmary, Wilson Castle out in Vermont. So we've been traveling around for it. But when it comes to me booking events, I just do it for myself and my friends and whoever wants to like come hang out with us. And speaking of this, I am actually going with Amanda next week to two spooky locations around Buffalo, which will be the Hinsdale House and the Wildwood Sanatorium.
That's absolutely totally amazing. And I'll come back to The Feminine Macabre soon, but we now have Andy, who's joining us. Andy is part of, if I remember rightly, and if I got this wrong, please say, but you're the designer for the Haunted magazine. Have I got that right? And can you tell me about your journey into the Haunted magazine and explain what it is for people, because people should know what the Haunted magazine is, but for those that don't, where you can get hold of the wonderful online magazine.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, in terms of the whole journey into being involved in Haunted magazine, Paul started this off in 2009, so we can fill you in the blanks between 2009 and late 2010, which is when I kind of joined in. It was initially a print magazine at the time. It ran for issues 0 to issue X, and then because of rising print costs and that kind of thing, it just really wasn't viable. We took the decision in that time to go digital, because at the time it seemed that everything was going digital, PDFs, Kindles. It really looked like print was the dead way of going. So we were successful in reaching, I think one of the magazines reached about 1 million readers at one point. Crazy amounts of people seeing it. And then we kind of decided after about sort of 14 issues or so, we can't count because we always do these extra issues as well. So we got to issue 15 and we thought we'd try it in print. We had a first go at it. We had a few issues on one of the publishing companies at the time. We came back, and really it's largely down to some of the perseverance of not just ourselves but the writers. Patti Negri is also in amongst the mix, because the Women in Paranormal really saw itself into fruition thanks to some of her help, really. And from that point we kind of grew from there. We kind of were raw when we came back in print. We issued it from direct publishing from our website. But I think along the way we've learned so much together. And each step has been a cautious step as we kind of get the right writers, and of which there's just so many brilliant writers out there. There's one to the side of me here that's actually really quite a good writer as well. Nice pictures. It all works together pretty well. But really, we've got this ensemble of such a brilliant batch of minds that can tell stories about the paranormal that not necessarily you'll find everywhere. I mean, there's other magazines that do paranormal, but I don't think there's a magazine that does paranormal the way that we do. We've always said right from the very beginning, we want a magazine that we would buy ourselves as people with a long-standing interest in the paranormal, which covers not just ghosts, it covers aliens, it covers all sorts of things, creatures, but anything that's an interesting story that we can present in a certain way will generally make its way into the magazine. And we're really quite proud of this latest one that's come about. It's the biggest one we've done at a time when print is not cheap to produce. They've put all the cost of everything up at the present time, but we're battling against that, and we just want to make a mag that everybody will kind of find something of interest in, or at least some jumping off points to discuss. I mean, we've got some fabulous ones in this issue, and again, it's by people that are living and breathing in the paranormal world, so or not in some cases.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Before I bring Courtney back in, talking about her work in the book, The Feminine Macabre, I just wanted to come to you, Andy, because I have heard that your views of the paranormal have changed since your early days. I think you were more, if I'm right, you were more skeptical in your early days, and it's kind of your belief. Maybe you won't say you're an outright believer, but it's kind of loosened up a bit. Am I right there? And if I am right, was there any sort of defining moment which really made you think, hang on, this is I can't explain this, or this is really making me think?
I've had a number of experiences along the way. I kind of think always elements of the paranormal have been around since I was a child, and just sort of that inbuilt fascination. But I started going on investigations with Haunted Live. At the time, it was 7 of us, and I'd say for the first few investigations, I was probably willing more things to happen than were actually happening. The group changed to a 5 at the time, and we had done some good investigations. Again, nothing that kind of jumped out to me and said, "Hey, this is life-changing. This is paranormal." And then we went to East Drive, which some people have great experiences with. Some people don't have any experiences whatsoever. It's quite a mixed bag. The history of the location doesn't seem to match some of the stories within the location, and yet stuff happens in there. And I was quite sort of ready for this investigation. We were filming it as well for one of the lives that we did, and it's there that I think opened my mind quite substantially. We were investigating the stairway, and as I walked into that area, there's a mirror on the wall, and it kind of, you can see up the top of the stairs, and literally for a split second, I looked up the top of the stairs, and there was this little girl dressed in what can only be described as kind of like Victorian or Edwardian attire. I can still sort of see the image in my mind, which is crazy, because I mean, this was literally for a split second. It was just that instant thing of, there you go, I'm here to see you. It totally out of time. And as I looked up the stairs, there was nothing there. As I looked back in the mirror, there was nothing there. And a few things also went off on the night that were intriguing, especially around the stairway area. We had stuff going off left, right, and centre. So I think that's where I thought, you know what, there is more to this. There is more to just being skeptical and being able to dismiss everything. And I think from that point, your mind sort of starts to open up a little bit, and then you start, I think, enacting an element of faith. And I think if you have an open mind in these situations, you will invariably get a better experience than if you close your mind off and think that you can explain every single thing that goes off. And since that point, there's probably been 3 or 4 significant occasions which I really find myself struggling to account for. One was we did Moira Furness and this one was quite sort of spooky. As I sort of walked past a doorway in the kitchen area within Moira Furnace, there was basically a figure that stood about my sort of height. Now, I'm not small, I'm 6'4". It was my sort of height, but it was like fully robed and black, and just a full shape that was there. It wasn't see-through or anything. This was a full shape. It was as though one of us was staying in there, just messing about with like a monk's uniform or something, all robes rather. And went back through the doorway. There's nothing there. And I know that if you had one of my colleagues on Haunted Live, Jason, he'd tell you a few things with regards to monks and stuff, because I think obviously with doing East Drive in the past, and they spent a significant amount more time there than I have, they also had those kind of experiences. And then I think the two that I would categorize really are experiences that I'd had at Prism nightclub in Nottingham, which they allowed us in very graciously after some footage appeared online where the till was seemed to open itself and close itself on CCTV footage. So we had the opportunity to explore areas that weren't necessarily widely explored. And it's got quite a dark history, the place, in the past anyway. And the first occasion we were there, we had a lot of bangs and that sort of activity, but we kind of split into groups, and I basically wanted to get some kit from this boudoir area that was at the top of the nightclub. So I'm there, and I'm thinking, I'm talking away to Jason, who's coming with me. We're going up the stairs, and as I get up to the top of the stairs, I think I've seen something in the sort of the window area where it's like a shadow that's walked across. We're the only people in there. Things I've been rabbiting away, so just quite freely talking. I turn around. Jason's nowhere to be seen. I'd been speaking to somebody that was walking with me, but just wasn't there. It was really quite a spooky experience. Here he is, look.
I was just passing. Hello.
Fantastic. And all our faces are just beginning to get a little smaller now. So those on the phones, it's like little postage stamps, I think, now. But it's I will come back to you, Courtney, to say about the feminine macabre. But as Paul has just arrived, I'd like to sort of talk about, because the beginnings of the Haunted magazine, before it went into being the online version that we see now, and your views on paranormal, and if it's changed as well, please, Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what Andy said, but the paranormal the magazine started in 2009. It first came out in a print format originally, but the idea was many years before that. To be fair, I've always had an interest in doing a magazine, and the paranormal. I always loved the paranormal since I was a kid. I used to get the Osborne books in the late 70s as a kid. Keep going blurry. What was that about? Yeah, so I've always had an interest in writing and the paranormal. And 2009, when the first magazine came out, it ran for print for a couple of years. And then it just cost too much, if we're honest. Print costs just shot up astronomically. But we wanted to keep the brand going, so we decided to go digital. That was about 3 or 4 years, and then back into print and digital. So it's been a journey. That's definitely correct. On Waffly, what was your question, Paul? Sorry.
No, the early days of it. So your first sort of trigger, because we heard about how it went to being an online magazine, but your first kind of triggers of thinking, I'm going to do this, because I think myself included with some things, and that's why I got into NLP, to actually make my goals happen. But some people think, I'm going to do a magazine, it's going to be fantastic, I'm going to write a book, and it never actually happens. But you actually took the decision, I want this, I'm going to make it happen.
I think it was something that we saw that, the paranormal can be fun. It should be fun. It should be entertaining. And at the time, in 2007, 8, 9, Most Haunted was on, and at its pomp, at its body best in that early 5, 6, 7 year period, and everybody loved it, and it sort of like opened people's imagination and people's eyes to a new way of the paranormal. And I just thought that there's a market for a magazine of that ilk, a fun magazine that wasn't for scientists, wasn't for experts, wasn't for just science-based information. It encompassed everybody who loved the paranormal. And I'll be perfectly honest, it might have been ahead of its time in 2009. But then luckily Facebook social media exploded. And 2010-11, more and more groups were popping up, more and more teams, more and more locations were being open the doors to the public. So it's sort of grown from there. But yeah, it's we love doing it, and it's just it's just great to see it grow. We've always said we're going to crawl before we can walk before we can run. It's a journey, and I've always erred on the entertainment side of the paranormal. I've always loved having a laugh and having fun, and I think with Andy's great design, I think it shows. And the writing we've got, the team of LJ up in the corner, wherever she is on my screen, the team of writers we've got just get what we do, what we stand for. And we do justice to their, we need to do justice to their words, because some of their words and some of their stories are fantastic.
Brilliant. I'm going to bring Courtney back in now. So can you, so if you can talk about your journey into actually putting your piece into the feminine macabre, that'd be really good. And also as well, what I'd like to hear about, and I've heard on the podcast, and you do feel like there's a maybe past life thing going on, and we've spoken a little bit over Instagram, my interest, fascination with past lives, but I hope I'm getting the right sanatorium, the Waverly Hill Sanatorium. Have I got it right? Yeah. So if you can talk about feminine macabre and the Waverly Hill and some of the evidence you picked up, because there, if I got the right ones from your Instagram, there's some great EVPs that you captured at that location as well. So we can talk about that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So for volume 1, I kind of tapped in to something that I learned about when I was probably in 6th grade. It is about a Victorian, how are we gonna say this? It's basically about safety coffins. I didn't want to give it away, but I'll give it away. So it's about safety coffins and about, how the Victorians were kind of afraid to be buried alive, because back in the day, they didn't really have those things, or like they don't have the technology that we have right now to like help kind of say if someone passed or not. So I wrote about that, and that one was super fun to kind of like dive into. And for my third one, or for the third volume that's coming out this month, I decided to write about an occult game. Like the Bloody Mary games and the Candyman games, they always fascinated me when I was a kid, especially on sleepovers. Mm-hmm. And probably about 10 years ago, one came across my screen, and I've kind of been kind of curious about it since. So when volume 3 came out, I was like, we're going to go right back into the childhood fears, and we're going to write about one. So that one was fun. But going into what Paul said about Waverly, Waverly Hill Sanatorium, if you haven't heard of it, it is a huge TB sanatorium down in Louisville, Kentucky. It was made for Kentucky because Louisville had pretty much the worst epidemic of tuberculosis. So the entire Waverly Hills was built for them. And I learned about this place since I was probably about 8. I saw it on Scariest Places on Earth, and then all the other ghost shows that followed. And this location was pretty much one that stuck out with me no matter what. I just always wanted to learn about the place. I knew everything about it inside and out, like at age 12. I just recently went last spring, so that visit was 20 years in the waiting. But I just feel so drawn to tuberculosis sanatoriums and especially asylums, and especially Waverly Hills. When I went there, I felt this immense comfort and almost like it was home. And it was weird because I never set foot inside this place. I only knew of it. I only saw pictures. I only knew of people who were in there. So actually being in there, it kind of just, it was overwhelming at first, but then it grew on me and it just kind of felt like this is home. It sounds home. And this year, actually in April, I'll be spending about 72 hours there. So I'm going to be on the grounds for like for 3 whole days. Just
That'll be cool.
Yeah.
So is this going to be like Nick Groff and Katrina, sort of staying and sleeping and camping out in quite uncomfortable conditions? Is that what you're going to be doing as well, Courtney?
I wish, but we're actually on the bunkhouse that they made on site out of an old pump house. So we'll be on the grounds, like we'll be there, but we won't be sleeping inside.
See, I'd like the comfort myself, so that's a good thing to me. Lindsay's just put up, and thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay, one half of ETA, and thank you for giving me this chance tonight to be up and presenting, and I'm absolutely delighted to be doing this. So if anybody does have a question, please put them in the comments, and I'll do my best to find them and get them up for you. Right, okay, so Dee said, I have lots of experience, was thinking of writing a book myself. Now, you've all written, every single person has written saying, and I think, Courtney's disconnected. Oh, she's coming back. We're okay. Advice from sort of all of you, because you've all actually put stuff down online, maybe also one in print as well as some of you, but just the advice for Dee to actually get started. Any kind of difficulties, again, of a writer's block, what to write about as well in the paranormal field. So who would like to go first with that one? We haven't heard from you, Lorien, for a while actually, so shall I put you on, Lorien, first?
Sure. I was just thinking, actually, I was talking to Andy a little while back about writing a book. It's not paranormal, it's something I had in my mind from years back when I was in New Zealand, working in a factory making kiwi boxes, and me and my partner were just running this machine for like 10 hours a day. It was so loud we couldn't even speak to each other. And then these thoughts just popped into my mind, and I developed this story, and I said to Andy, because you've written your books yourselves, I said, I've got this idea, but I just don't have time. And Andy said, you do have time. You're making excuses that you don't have time. And he said, even if you just set yourself a limit, 200 words a day or something, do those 200 words a day. And if they're not any good, you can review them, go back, edit them, but just make yourself. And as soon as I'm writing a book at the minute, which is paranormal from my Ale House Haunts kind of side of things. And it's about the history of haunted pubs. And I think I started it probably last April, maybe, and got a little bit done, and then kind of left it towards Halloween and over Christmas, and then all that busy time, I've just totally abandoned it. And now I've really got my teeth back into it again. And once you do start and make the effort, then you just kind of feel it snowballing. So I would say just start. It doesn't matter if you change your mind and you go back, like I say, and edit it. Just start writing what you think you want to write. If you want to write your experiences, or you have a particular interest in an area of whatever, like I'm doing with the history of pubs, just start. Even if it's on a notepad, make a start. And once you do, you think, I've started writing a book now, and you've made that first step. So that would be my advice. Just get on with it.
Amazing advice. So Andy and Paul, I know that it's very important for you, for the words that are put down that from the person writing, is that it comes from their enjoyment of the paranormal. Is there any more advice that you give for the enjoyment side of writing as well? Do you want to go first, Andy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the project that I did was started with a seed of an idea with my son, and we ended up just sort of knocking these ideas back and forth, and it quickly became apparent that there was a story here. that needed to be told. And I was probably exactly like Lorien. There's so many things to stop you from writing a book, but the one key ingredient is just you. And I watch avidly Doctor Who, and I was watching a making of where Neil Gaiman just gave advice to any writer, and it was literally 2 words: just write. And I think that's the most important thing. The first step, the first probably chapter of my book is the best chapter I've ever written, because I probably wrote it 27 times until I was happy with it. But once you start getting into that flow, once you start seeing the seeds, characters, and the narrative of the story that you want to tell, all of a sudden it doesn't become this chore or anything that's about deadlines or anything like that. It becomes something that's quite consuming, and the more that you enjoy what you do, the more that comes out on the page. I knew exactly the story that I wanted to tell was a story that isn't going to be a conventional story for everybody. It's going to have elements of the paranormal, because that's where my interests lie. But it's also going to be a bit more fantastical and not necessarily going to give you all the answers that you may want from a story. And I've got particular characters to kind of interweave along the way. But the main advice I would give anybody that has even a thought that they want to do a book of any description is just write and start off with just a few hundred words and see how you go. And if you start enjoying what you're doing, you will understand that there's more to it. You can do it. Everybody's got a book in them, in my opinion, if they want to do it. And so just give it a go, because I think you'll find that you'll surprise yourself, and you'll actually have something that will be much more engaging than you think you're ever capable of doing. And the other thing is not to be too hypercritical of your own work. Obviously, you want all the spellies and that kind of thing taken out. And if you can get somebody else to have a read over it, brilliant, because that's another pair of eyes for you. But just write, just enjoy what you're doing, get to the end of it, revise it, and you have more platforms than ever now that you can self-publish and get it out there. Amazon's a fantastic way of getting that book into the hands of individuals, and it's global. So anybody in the world can be reading something that you've written, and that can be 10,000 words, it can be 60,000 words, but just do it, because I think you'll find once you get to it, you'll be so rewarded by the end result.
Lynn, my good friend Lynn, Nanny Lynn, has put that's good advice. That's how I started. Paul, do you feel that because you say it was quite ahead of its time, the magazine when it first came out, has the writing changed from those early print versions to the online version we have today?
Yeah, it's changed massively for the better, to be honest. I think the paranormal world in 2009 was so different to what it is in 2022, in terms of the people in it, in terms of the perception of it, and everything. So the first few issues were just basically, I wrote probably half of it, and I've been doing less ever since, which I like. I really do like doing less. But no, it's going back to what LJ and Andy have said. You write because you want to write, not because you feel you have to write. Everyone's got a story, a ghost story. I agree to that. But if you want to write, write. We've had lots of first-time people writing for the magazine over the years. Some of them have gone on to write books and be published. And I always tell people, like the J.K. Rowling story, Harry Potter was just a story for her daughter. A bedtime story. That's how it started. And look at it now. Look at what she's done and achieved over the course of the last 15, 20 years. But is it my eyes or I'm going blurry? I realise.
No, it's all right. So I think you're doing okay. Let me just call this one down. We'll get a bit bigger because I was going to.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure Courtney will say the same advice as what we've all said. There's a story in everybody, and especially ghost stories. Everyone's got a ghost story, and I think we've seen with the recent shows like Uncanny and the Battersea Poltergeist, and the podcasts that are out there. There's so many podcasts, so many stories. Everybody's got a story. And if you want to write. Don't be forced. Don't feel you've got to write, or even tell your story, but just enjoy it and have fun doing it.
Completely. So, Courtney, and I was just going to, I get, because it makes everybody really small when I get the questions up, but more on what has been said just now about writing. Also, as well, I think this one was very much for you about the Waverly Hill Sanatorium. Do you think it felt like home due to the spirits being happy with you being there, or because you have been there in a past life? So we started to touch on the past life. So if you can add that into the answer as well, please.
Yeah, so I'm just going to piggyback off of everyone. My only advice is to really just follow your heart. I never thought that I would be in 2 Feminine Macabre books and be on all these podcasts that I am on, and, you know, like, be as happy as I am in the paranormal if I never started. So my advice is just to start and to follow your heart. You'll find your way eventually, and it's a beautiful journey to kind of like go on and like see everything that you didn't think you could do by just starting. So yeah, and then going to the Waverly comment, I think it's a mixture of both. So when I came home, my friend who's sensitive, they told me that not only did I have a doctor follow me home, which I don't know if he's still around or anything, but I had a doctor follow me home apparently, and the spirits were kind of happy with me because they knew I wasn't just there for like YouTube views, I guess you can say. In my heart, I knew Waverly Hills was haunted, so if anything that didn't happen there didn't happen, I would have walked away and been like, oh, that place was so scary, like I'm so here for it. Like I would have been happy regardless. But when we had the amount of activity that we had that time, and you know, like all the stories that are coming out from the group that we had going with us, I really can't help but think that it's a mixture of everything. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. And I guess this just means that we definitely have to do a past life regression.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, I'd be totally up for that. So question from Patricia here, if it's going to pop up. Yep, there we go. This would be a question for everybody here. So we'll go around in clockwise. Start with Lorien again. Do you think demons exist, or are they just manifested from a person looking for them? What's your thoughts and feelings, everybody, about demons? Because it has got into the paranormal consciousness and ghost hunting consciousness recently. So start with you, Lorien.
Yeah, so my jury's out on demons because I was quite happy to dismiss them, don't believe them, and that makes me feel better when I'm investigating as well. If they're not there, then I'm all right. But I have spoken to good friends who believe that they do exist. So when somebody you trust and confide in tells you, yeah, we've seen things, I'm like, oh God, now you've thrown me into turmoil. I do think that I don't think there's as many, if they do exist, as people claim there to be. And my personal opinion would be that, like we've all said before, but as in life, in death, you will get bad people. And I do believe in reincarnation. So I think if maybe you're a bad person and you come back as a bad person, your soul can just get a little bit Voldemorty. You just get nastier and nastier and nastier, and those spirits can stay, and maybe that's what people are experiencing. So that's what I like to think. Yeah, I totally think that it's very, what's the word, sensationalized for the YouTube videos and things. You know, you throw demon in the title and you're going to get watchers because people, like, it's like a car crash, people want to look at that thing, don't they? So I think it's overused, the word. I'm not convinced. I tell myself, no, they don't exist, because that makes me feel better. And I do think, like I say, to repeat myself, it's just maybe just a bad soul that's just got nastier and nastier each time and is just a bit rotten.
And you must have heard from people that have sent in stories about demons. What's your view on them?
Well, we've never really had that many sort of demon stories come through, really,
Okay.
Paul, have we? It's not something really that does come up that often. In terms of my own view, I mean, I think they come into several different categories. There's the historical view of where demons would reside. There's the demons that I think are present in all of us in terms of what fear is and how we manifest it ourselves. And I think that can project on certain things, especially if you're investigating in certain circumstances or where certain places have had a particularly dark past. But in terms of the sensational stuff that goes on a lot of TV shows and YouTube channels, I mean, don't get me wrong, it grabs your interest. It's the kind of thing that we've seen on horror films, really, rather than seeing investigations into the paranormal. And I think, in all honesty, the hysterical approach to that's completely wrong. I think there may well be some vicious spirits there, but I don't necessarily think that's anything to do with demons themselves. I think that there is an element of the person investigating projecting what they want to see, and that comes back at them. But then I would still say that the jury's out on that. There's enough in this world that we don't know. And just because you can't see something doesn't mean that it isn't there. So I think from my own perspective, I would stay open-minded. I've not particularly been in an environment where I've been affected or seen anything that I would consider to be actually demonic. I think more often than not, when we investigate places, it's usually residue of something that's there, or there is something left over that wants to communicate. But I certainly don't think that unless you go into investigations looking for that kind of trouble, that you're going to experience that kind of thing. And I think there is a lot of history, and you can obviously connect with these things if you choose to go down that path and do so. But it's certainly something that I would imply would need a sufficient amount of education before you look to go and poke that bear.
And Andy, do you agree? Sorry, Paul, do you agree with Andy there?
Yeah, to be fair, I agree with it. It gets harder every time you ask the question, because Courtney gets the bad trot all the time. I agree with
I'll reverse
Andy
you next time.
I agree with Andy and Lorien, really. I mean, there's an expression, I don't know if you guys use it in the States, Courtney, but you're battling your inner demons. And so the word's been around. It's part of us. It's part of our makeup. It's like the word ego. We've all, ego is a big word in the paranormal world. But we've all got an ego inside us. It's how we portray it and how we use it to our, to rather than have an ego. We've all got it, but it's how we use it for our paranormal journeys. Going back to demons, I agree with Lorien with the bad soul thing. Everybody can be bad. Everybody can have bad times and bad moments. And I go back to demons and devils. And if you look at religion and history, that kind of it, are they fallen angels? If they are fallen angels, demons, that means that they were essentially good. What's made them bad? What's portrayed them as bad? As religion had some kind of effect on them, but we're going down many rabbit holes down that question. But yeah, I kind of agree with Andy and Lorien, really. We don't get much of them over. They are talked about more than ever before in the UK. As regards stories for the magazine, we don't get that many. Not saying we wouldn't want any. If any listeners out there want to send their deep stories, please feel free. But no, it's I just think you go with a good heart to the paranormal. If you come across demonic activity, it's how you portray it. Some may say poltergeist are demons, some may say incubus and succubus. You go down so many rabbit holes with this, Paul.
Yes, exactly. I know Scotty's on here. If I haven't said hi to you, Scotty, yet, apologies, and anybody else that I've missed as well. So, Courtney, demons for you come across either through yourself or in the because Lorien has the feminine macabre. It's going to be ordered, but by the time I knew about it, it wouldn't have got to me in time. But your perspective, and is there some demonic work in the feminine macabre?
So I'm just like with everyone else. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I personally do not think they exist. I think that, if people who come into contact with these quote unquote dark entities, I think it could be a spirit that's just misunderstood, who's coming off aggressive in the, the EVPs or whatever you catch, when really it could just be like a disability. Like at Rolling Hills, there's a guy, the superintendent who was there, he passed away there. So anyone who tries to contact him, he had a stroke. So he can't really talk. So like any EVPs you get are going to sound like gurgling and going to sound like, what the hell is that? But really it was just a poor little man who was trying to answer your questions who can't really speak. So I think it's all like the way you interpret it. Like Paul and Edie said, it is what it is. Like, I personally don't believe in it. If you believe in it, that's cool. I'd like some evidence of it, but that's cool.
Yes, completely and utterly there. So we're getting some questions coming through. I'm going to just sort of see. So through yourselves, either what somebody has sent you through in the magazine, or somebody's told you, or actually capturing yourself some of the best evidence. I know we heard from Andy earlier, but Paul, evidence that you've either experienced or somebody else experienced that has really made you think.
Well, I'm guessing Andy's told you about his experiences, his many experiences. He had far more than me. But the one that gets me, to be fair, Paul, is there's a place in Hinckley in Leicestershire called the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre, HAPRC. We were there doing a live Facebook stream, and we had a guy called Barry Guy, who's a paranormal investigator, join us for an event. And we were doing the usual thing on Facebook, investigating various locations, taking it in turns to film and calling out and EVPs, all the usual stuff. And then about an hour and a half in, we went to sit in the seance room. There's a seance room there at the place, and we sat around. I was filming at the particular time, where the guy sat around the table, trying to encourage the table to move, as you do. And lo and behold, the table moved. And Andy will back me up. This is a heavy table. It moved. It didn't just wobble or anything like that. It actually shifted at one angle and then shift towards another. And the beauty of the people that I was with, Haunted Live and Barry, is these are people that I trust. This was not a game, a spoof, or anything like that. That table moved, and to this day, when I still watch the video or still watch the 50-second clip of it, it freaks me out. It baffles me as to what the hell actually happened. And still to this day, it's about good 3 or 4 years ago now. And it's probably the best footage we've captured ourselves personally. And I just cannot fathom how that table moved. And it's hard to put, unless you see it, unless you're there, it's hard to visualize it. The clip's on our page if anyone wants to go and see it. But
I was going to ask that, where people can see this.
Well, and I'll put a link up as well if you want later on. But please. Also, though, I believe the paranormal is a personal journey, and if sometimes you have to be there in that moment to experience the things that you see people talk about and experience. And the table moved, didn't it, Andy? Back me up here, mate.
This was a proper heavy table, and not like decorating table. This was like 2-inch thick, really heavy circular table. Cloth was on it. We were getting little bits of activity during that part of the night, and we've done a bit of EVP work, and we got some quite good EVPs. But that was just the icing on the cake, because we asked for it, it happened, and we were all like, "Oh!"
There was a few swear words. I can tell you.
Yeah, that was the Ginger Ninja that came out with that, wasn't it?
The thing is, though, right? We are Haunted Live. The ethos of Haunted Live is one camera, 4 guys, ghost hunting. Not 2 cameras, not split cam, not lock cameras. So I was filming, and I filmed, was aiming at the table, and it moved. And then people have said, "Oh, I wish you could have seen to see if anybody kicked the table whilst we were there. But the whole idea, if we put a camera under the table, then we were expecting it to move. If that makes sense. But we're just filming what we would do. That's all. So it's just it baffles me. I will send the clip so people can see it.
I'll tell you now. If it was a case of somebody thinking that we were kicking the table would have come off better, and you would have hurt your foot.
It's a heavy table.
Yeah, it's not something that you could just jiggle like that. You have to physically move this table round, and there is no way that just did it from one of us with our feet or whatever. And we were all like hands off the table at this point, and it just went. So
I think it all goes back to the thing, Jane and I have discussed in the past, like the majority of the things that you experience, if you try and explain that to somebody else or show somebody else, they're going to have 40,000 questions. They're not going to believe you. Whereas to you that experience wasn't you kicking the table or whatever. I think so many of the things that we do experience are for our benefit and not to convince anybody else, because it's pointless. Because a lot of the time things can be so minimal as well, which means something to you but wouldn't mean anything to anybody else. So you just have to appreciate the experience yourself and not try to worry about what other people question or suggest, because you had it, and that's all that matters, isn't it?
And fundamentally, the fact of what we do is we trust one another implicitly. We want stuff to happen for real. There is no point in somebody turning up, doing things for you, or dropping stuff to make it sound like something's in the corner of a room. There's no point in that whatsoever. So we have 100% trust in each other. So we know that whatever happens, happens. And if nothing happens, nothing happens. Nothing paranormal happens or whatever. But when things do start to happen, you get that repeating chain of events during an investigation. That's what starts to become interesting. And knowing that you've got the backup of people around you that are also there trying to find their own answers to what's going on makes this even more special. And there's nothing better than when we're investigating with guests at Haunted Antiques and we have a different experience of things every single time. It's just a blast. It really is.
Mm.
I will answer I will come to your questions soon there, Gillian. I'm just sort of finishing off this question at the moment because I was going to move to Lorien, because we did sort of briefly touch on you've done some investigations at Derby Gaol, and evidence that was caught. There's quite a compelling bit of footage of Richard Felix glass of whiskey moving off the table, and I'm not sure if Richard was more pleased that it actually happened or he was disappointed of losing his glass of whiskey. So kind of put the surroundings around that.
Well, I wasn't actually there on that evening, so I've only seen the footage that you've seen, but I've spoken to Richard and he's 100% adamant. Like we were just saying, you try and convince people that say you knocked the table with your leg, or when you put a glass down on a wet, or the glass is wet on a surface, it can slide. But if you watch that closely, you can see that it doesn't slide. It slowly moves, then stops, and then topples. But I can tell you now that the tables in the jail are very rough, rustic cut wood. So even if it had that traction, that's not what would have caused that incident to happen. So it was an interesting one. But like you say, I think he was more disappointed that he'd lost his whiskey.
Sorry, isn't there two, Lorien, is there not two camera angles? Is there another angle?
Yeah. So somebody was filming on their phone, which you see it more directly because they were sitting opposite. But then, the CCTV camera did pick it up as well.
Yes, that's. I mean, it's not very often you get two angles of footage, is it? A lot of the time.
And the fact that it happened on Halloween as well. I think it got more criticism for that, but just purely the coincidence of the day that it was caught. So, but it looked interesting.
So, if people want to see that bit of footage, because I have seen it when you were talking about it before, but where can people see that bit of footage, Lorien?
I think the place to go is the Richard Felix fan site. The name's something like that. I can find the link. It's just a Facebook group, but it's on there. I'll find it and put the link up.
Fantastic. And I'll now come to you, Courtney, and I'll just hide Gillian's question, but it will be the next question I come to, Gillian. But I just wanted, so we can get a bit bigger, so I've just minimized it for the moment. Some of your evidence, and also wanted to bring in, because I heard on another podcast that you're involved in, we did say a little bit just right at the beginning before the live went out, what you've used to capture EVPs, and it's old technology, but is really good at picking up EVPs, and they're really expensive now on eBay. So you can tell about some of your EVPs, some of the evidence you captured, and this interesting device, please.
Yeah. So I'll tell you guys two things. One, we'll go back to the Waverly Hills. It was myself and 3 other people. We all went to the body shoot. So if you don't know what the body shoot is, it's this 450-foot long tunnel that was used to haul up building materials when it first started. So it held up building materials from the bottom of the hill. But when Waverly Hills was pretty much at their one death an hour in the peak epidemic, they didn't know what to do. So morale was really the point. So instead of all the patients sitting on the back porch watching the parade of hearses, they decided to start lowering the bodies down in the tunnel so no one would see them, and no patients would know just how many deaths were coming out of the building. So it was me and 3 other friends. We were the only ones down there. We were probably down there for about 10 minutes taking videos, pictures, and when you go there, it starts out smooth and then it pitches at a 45-degree angle. So I stood right where it started to pitch, and there's only one way in and one way out. And the entire time I just kept looking over my right shoulder to the door. For some odd reason, I kept thinking that we were going to get chased down there. Something was going to poke out. I was so freaked out, and come to find out, someone heard something at the very bottom of the hill. So I finally took my attention away, and we all stared there. And I should mention that we had EVPs going at this time. Someone took theirs off. I kept my recorder on. And it was 10 seconds of pure silence. And when my recorder went over to a minute, all you hear is this ginormous slam. And it just echoed throughout the entire building. We all screamed, so our screams were just as loud. At one point, someone was like, "What is that?" And you can hear us go, "I don't know." And one of the girls started running, and we're all like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, we have to go figure out what it is." So we all started running, and come to find out, it was the emergency exit door in the hallway. The motion light outside was on too. There was no one on the property, and there was security, but he wasn't around. And the other half of the group that we went with, they were on the other side of the hallway, 2 or 3 floors up, had no walkie on, had no idea where we were, and they didn't hear us screaming, and they didn't hear the door bang at all. So I captured that. So that's on my Instagram if you guys want to check it out. And
Definitely.
Another one, there is another TB hospital out in New York that I started kind of helping to clean up and give back to it. So every once in a while, I'll go and investigate there with a few friends, and we use a DR60. So it is a digital recorder, Panasonic, from the 1990s. A lot of people use them as, voice recorders for college lectures. But then when they started playing them back, they were hearing all these voices that shouldn't have been there. So basically, they thought it was a faulty thing, and they kind of went by the wayside. But when the paranormal TV shows started coming up, they started using them, and you can get some Class A EVPs on there. So if you ever want one and you have $4,000 to spend, they're on eBay. They are a ridiculous amount of money. Don't fall for them, because any recorder is good. You don't need the fancy pants recorder. You can just even use your phone. We captured EVPs on our phones before. But going back to Saratoga, we the TB hospital. Me and my friend Steve, we put this recorder down in a wing by itself, left it there for probably about 10 minutes, and in theory, it didn't pick up anything because it's voice activated. So there should be just nothing on the file. When we go to pick it up, there are 2 distinct male voices, and they pretty much just call me out. And it says, there's a girl with them. There's a girl there. In the clearest voice I've ever heard. That's also it was very creepy, and like I feel like that set the tone for that entire night, because that was also the night we heard dragging sounds in the basement. So if anyone has seen my quote unquote fear phase, this is night. Yeah, like we used like a fancy recorder, but you really don't have to. You can just use pretty much anything.
Brilliant. I get Jill's question up now. I don't know which Paul this is, so I'll answer it first and then see, as Paul's mentioned, Haunted Magazine Paul to answer, and then we'll move on. Gillian's question is, Paul, can someone that was cruel to you in your childhood come back and torment you? My answer to that would be it's possible, but with the NLP work that I do, neuro-linguistic programming, with the coaching through that and the hypnosis, I would say do whatever you can to build yourself up, your confidence and your strength, because I think even if a spirit does come back, if you make yourself strong and powerful and directly say to whatever it is tormenting you to leave, or add whatever extra words in you want to do, I think if we take your power back, that trauma will actually stop what you're getting. So anybody else has views? We'll go to Paul next, what your view is on that.
Yeah, I think I touched on it about the word inner demons a few minutes ago, about if you've had experienced trauma in the past as a kid or an adult, and something could trigger that off again and bring back those memories, and it may not be a child or who tormented you in the past that is haunting you or doing something to you, but you may think it is. So it's it's the paranormal, and I always say anything can happen. It could well be, but it's very much likely your inner demons. I mean, I just flicking it back. When I was a kid, I had an imaginary friend called Steve from Manchester, and my mum had to at dinner time and tea time had to lay a place for him with a plate, knife and fork and cutlery. My dad had to pick him up on the road, pull up and pick him up. And I used to play with him at 4 or 5 years old, that kind of thing. And then one day my mum turned around and said, "Where's Steve?" And I turned around and said, "He's dead." So I just, I mean, I was a kid. I can't remember any of it, to be honest. So I'm relying on my mum and dad to tell me these things. But, it's go back to your inner demons. I'd hate to think that something in somebody's past can torment you so much. But I doubt, and I do doubt it very much. But if it's in there, in your psyche somewhere, in your mind somewhere, and something triggers it off, then it's probably not a nice experience, and it brought some memories back. So I don't think it's probably paranormal. It's probably more built into you, and something's happened to trigger that.
I suppose it's kind of like when people use an Ouija board, and then from there on out, they assume that anything bad happens to them is because of that. Like something bad might happen, and you'd relate it to a past, trauma coming back, and assume that. I'm not saying it's not. I don't know, but it could. You'd assume, oh, it's so and so. He's, he or she. I'm assuming again, but yeah. I suppose if you've had that experience, it's easy to put normal bad experiences. Blame something for those is what I'm trying to say.
Completely. And Andy, do you agree with the way things are going here?
Yeah, I think we as people are very good antennas for picking up certain things. If you've got somebody that's been that malevolent to you in early life and they pass, I understand why you could put 2 and 2 together and think that person's responsible for anything that suddenly changes in your life, like bad luck. But luck in particular is something that you make for yourself, and again, it's the way you project on things really is how much luck you therefore receive. So I think it's unlikely that malevolence is there. It's not impossible for that malevolence to be there. But for somebody that nasty that they're going to come back and haunt you specifically, I would say that's incredibly rare. Again, not impossible, but I would say, incredibly rare. I would say there's probably something more psychologically in your own makeup that possibly needs some work, possibly needs some counselling, rather than just leaping to the paranormal conclusion on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Courtney, are you with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
whatever. I think that really make sure you build up yourself. I think that really is key. So whether it is something coming back or whether it's your id that can come out on a Ouija board, make sure you do everything to make yourself a strong, powerful, and build up your self-worth. And not just people like me that do NLP, but there's loads and loads of books out there. There's lots of resources online, and I encourage people to start their personal development work. I think from any age really, right from when we're small as well. Let's see what this question is. If it is a question, let me get it up. The thing is with the paranormal is that you'll never be truly satisfied with the evidence that you captured. The more evidence you get, the more you want. I'm actually quite happy with whatever I got, and I've come back from investigations before now where I was with Lynn. She mentioned about they had something similar with a pint coming off the table at the New Inn, which is a pub in Gloucester, where I captured like a scream, and then we all went berserk and ran into the kitchen of Woodchester Mansion. I probably made the loudest noise out of everybody during that time. But I remember just being fascinated with this scream, watching it back over and over and over again. Do you find that with the evidence you get, the more you want, or are you just satisfied with anything you get? And because I think it was yourself, Andy, or was it Paul, that said you just basically enjoy ghost hunting. You don't really go in with the thought that I'm going to capture ghosts. It's just like, I'm here, I enjoy paranormal investigations, I'm going to enjoy my time. So should we go with yourself, Andy to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, that sounded a bit more like Paul. I think my view is it can become, especially when you start capturing those early little pieces of evidence, quite addictive.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more seeds of things that you get, more taps, more bangs, you almost at some point demand that you're going to get that from an investigation. So when you actually don't, you're kind of a little bit disappointed. But then I think if you didn't have those investigations where virtually nothing happened, then you'd think that, hang on a minute, what's this all about? What's the point? I think you've got to grow into each of the experiences. I think you've got to learn from your experiences, learn what to listen for. I think it's important to do a bit of research, understand the location. I personally prefer to do a location cold and research afterwards. I think Paul would probably prefer to do the research before and then go in and see if anything kicks off that's related to that location. But no, I genuinely think you can become quite addicted to your paranormal interest. And I think, again, it only just takes that one little piece of evidence that you can't explain, you show it around to people, they can't explain it, and then you do definitely want more. And then you get more hungry for something much more spectacular to happen. It's unlikely that something spectacular is going to happen, but when you least expect it, that's when the paranormal type stuff seems to surprise you the most.
So I think you take a slightly different view on it, don't you, Paul, where you just enjoy the ghost investigation. I think I got you both mixed up there from doing my research earlier today.
We look so much alike, it's all right. I think I agree with Andy in some ways, but I do it. I love ghost hunting. I love the paranormal. I love the buzz. I love the vibe. I love the crack of going out to a location that I wouldn't probably get the chance to go and just having a jolly good time. And if something happens, fantastic. That's a bonus. And also, I've got twin teenage girls, so I go out to get a rest from them. So that's a Brucey bonus. But no, I've always enjoyed the paranormal as not a bit of fun will probably put people off, but not as a bit of fun in terms of having a laugh, but and trickery, that kind of thing. I always, Andy knows me, and probably Lorien to a degree. I always try and have a smile on my face, always try and be positive, and I just take that into a ghost hunt and a paranormal investigation. you know, I do like to research the place. I've gone in cold sometimes. I use gadgets. I don't use gadgets. It doesn't really matter to me. I just enjoy the feeling of being in a location that might have something there for us. It might not, and that's just the way I view. I view the paranormal. It's probably why the way Haunted Magazine is like what it is, really, because it's not a factual thing. It's not. We're not saying we need to be believed. We need to be listened to. You know, words and pictures, and his great design, and the Lorien's and Team Haunters are great words. We bag it all together, and it is what it is. But yeah, I just enjoy the paranormal, Paul, to be honest, and it's a long journey, and I want it long as possible to enjoy it.
I'll move to you now, Courtney, and what's your thoughts and feelings on capturing evidence? Are you somebody who's just enjoying the experience like Paul, or are you more like Andy? You want more and more and more evidence?
I'm honestly just like Paul. Half the time I forget to use my equipment.
That sounds like Paul.
Like, if it goes there to want to talk, cool. If there's not, that's cool too. I just want to be in these old buildings, you know, experiencing just some of the things that could happen. Even if it's just, you know, like a boring night of us sitting around, I still find the fun in that, because those are sometimes some of the best memories that you never thought you would get. And I don't know. Yeah, like with the evidence that I have, I was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Would it happen again? Like, would I be excited if it happened again? Absolutely. But I'm also just like, I'm going to take what you guys give me. I'm not going to push. So, but yeah, I guess I'm just like Paul. I don't know. I just think it's fun. And when it starts to becoming like more addicting, where you want to like get everything you can and like get the best evidence, I think that kind of like takes away from it, because we're all just here just talking to the air, hoping it talks back to us.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I get your perspective on this, Lorien, and then we haven't spoken so much about the alehouse haunts. So if you can then move into that would be fantastic, Lorien.
Okay, so with me, like the piece I wrote for the Feminine Macabre was titled "The Importance of Knowing Your Ghosts." So for me, researching a location before I go is important, because to me, you are going into a place where other people have lived or existed or spent time, and to know a bit about those people is important, I think. And it probably, my article in the book was, you walk into somebody's house, you speak their name, you're more likely to get some kind of a response as opposed to going in knowing nothing. I can completely appreciate the way of going in blind and taking what you get and then comparing it to notes afterwards. That totally makes sense to me, but my preference is to learn beforehand. And I think I kind of almost, I'm not hungry for evidence or hungry for, if nothing happens, then that's fine. But I kind of see an investigation where I haven't found a little bit about the place first as a bit of a waste. If I've planned an investigation and I just don't have the time, being a mum, 2 young girls and everyday life, sometimes I don't have time to research a place. And I kind of feel like I've let myself down because I've missed an opportunity almost. And then there's been places where I've visited a location, I don't know about you guys, but again and again, a bit like you, Courtney, with Waverly. And you kind of, if you throw a name out that you know somebody lived there or worked there, whatever, spent time there, and then you get a response, then you think, that was interesting. The next time you go back, you try and push it a bit further, you try and learn a little bit more out about that person. So it's more like not so much hungry for evidence, but more of like being a bit of a detective and trying to discover who could still be there and why they're there. And so I don't think like I can come away from a place and not have had an experience. And I'm fine with that. I'm not disappointed, but I'm disappointed in myself if I don't push the right buttons that I could by speaking to people, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does, absolutely. So the alehouse haunts, if we can then sort of slide into the alehouse haunts, please.
Yeah, so alehouse haunts was an idea that I concocted in 2020, which was probably the worst possible year to start doing a project on pubs because they were all shut. But yeah, that was when the idea was born, and it's I've got the Ghost book, which is about all haunted places across the UK, and I kind of found myself being steered towards pubs. I love pubs anyway, but don't we all? The older and the creakier and the nooks and crannies and the little alcove bits you get, I love all that. And I just decided to explore it a bit more. I mean, there's so many pubs in the UK. Sometimes on a Saturday, if my mum and dad are having the girls and we think, oh, we'll go out for some food, I sit on Google and I try and find a pub that maybe we haven't been to before. And there's so many around us that you wouldn't even know are there. So I just decided to try and research them all and make a bit of a collective. So I've started a second website, which it's alehousehaunts.co.uk, I think, but there's nothing on there right now. All my research is stacking up here next to me and in folders and post-it notes and everything. But in the meantime, I am writing a book, which is exploring the history of our haunted pubs and why they're so haunted and all the things that happened in the pubs, from prison cells to courtrooms to like Wetherspoons, who have pubs which have such a varied history. The one in Glasgow used to be a bank, and another one I've been to used to be a theatre, so it's got the sloped floors, and how those kind of the pasts of pubs can affect the kind of spirits that might be there today that you might not necessarily understand. How a lot of our inns were actually hospices, or like a monk's, not hospices we see them today, but like a resting place for pilgrims and things that were coming to see the abbeys and etc. etc. So that's why a lot of the inns we have now, which are surviving monasteries or parts of a monastery, have monks in them, which people might think, well, why would a pub have a monk in it, for example? So it's kind of exploring all that history that our pubs have. So that's what's taken up all my time at the minute. I have an extra Instagram account, which is Alehouse Haunts, which I'm not great at keeping on top of, but I'm trying to tackle pubs, and I'm glad they're all open again for the time being.
Absolutely. So I'm realizing it's coming close to the 90 minutes now, so there will be an opportunity for everybody to sort of say all their social media, websites, blogs, podcasts, etc. But I saw this one come through from Mark. Why do we seem to see a lot of activity in attics or cellars? Places in day-to-day life are little used. And I must admit, when I've been on investigations, and it's not just me thinking it's a bit creepy down here, it's a bit creepy up there, it tends to be the EVPs come out in cellars, noises come out in cellars. Do you find that? And anybody got any theories? Because Mark's absolutely right. They are areas that are never really used.
I think it's just because they need a little spot to hide away from us. I just think it's like as innocent as that. Like take a house, for example. If a spirit was living in a house and then all of a sudden a family moved in, their like go-to roaming grounds have been taken over, so they kind of need their own little space to get away from us just as much as we need a space to get away from them sometimes. So I just think that's all it is. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good. Anybody want to add to that?
I just think that attics and cellars were probably used more back in the day than they are now, especially modern houses over here many don't have cellars, and attics are just roof space. But back in the day, I guess when there was a lot of families, a lot of people living in the house, and attics and cellars were probably used more than a little, to be fair. So I guess that's why maybe the activity could be there. I mean, the ones we've been into on our investigations are dank and depressing and everything. But I guess back in the day, their habitat there may have been something that they are used to. So I could understand why the question's it's a good question that the guy asked. But it's as I say, it's I believe that spirits, ghosts, whatever, spooks can go anywhere. Attics, cellars, front rooms, living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I get the question totally.
At one point though, going back to maybe pubs and also old houses, you have all the serving staff would have been up in the attics. As with the Four Crosses in Cannock, the attic space there was often used because it was on a main coaching route. If they were transporting prisoners, which often happened, they were placed up in the attic of the Four Crosses as the secure place whilst they were being transported on a stopover for the night example. And a lot of pubs especially had cells in the cellars. I know the old trip to Jerusalem had a whole setup of cells down there, and also bodies were stored. The cellars were often used as a morgue as well, pubs and houses. During the Irish famine, it was actually illegal for you to refuse to store a body in the cellar of a pub if it was needed, because there were so many bodies, and that was the cool place to, not the cool place, but the cold place to store a body. So that could be another reason why they're lingering around in those places.
I also think that sometimes you have dark history that's happened in those places. You could have had children that have been confined to the attic for being naughty, and that could form some kind of projection as to what energy is in there. But also, I mean, to talk about the darker sides of human nature, that people use those kind of places to, well, not necessarily see their life out after that point, and that can be an energy that manifests itself as well. I mean, the only kind of sort of places that I've been to that have had any kind of eerie feeling, I think Moira Furnace had a slightly eerie feeling in its top layer, but it's really dependent on what's happened there previously, and also probably the age of the building. I mean, if the building is something from more recent times, I wouldn't expect anything to be in a cellar or in an attic. But if it's something that's quite historic, then generally they're probably going to have something that's happened there that's not necessarily that savoury.
Well, remember, Andy, the Prism nightclub cellar, that was the original Nottingham jail, I believe. Yep. So it had the original jail walls. So it's not what's there now; it's what was there before. If that makes sense. So. Yeah.
Exactly. I will make this one because there are the questions coming through, and I really thank everybody for every single question that they've put. But I realised that you've given me, I said it'd be around 90 minutes, and it's rapidly approaching that time now. So I'll finish this, and then everybody will have an opportunity to say their social media, their websites, so people can follow books, resources, the magazine, etc., so people can just subscribe and get hold of if there's something they wish to get hold of. Claire, I just wanted to put this on because yes, I forgot to mention it's not just cellars, but yes, I heard Richard Felix saying that one of the most haunted places are public toilets. Do you agree? And if so, what's the theory and why? If I could just say something about this first. I think that there's something to do with water, because they say stone tape theory. We've also heard of water tape theory. And like with homeopathy, the idea is that the homeopathy, it's something poisonous, reduced down. The water has a memory, that the water going through the flushing of the toilets, the piping going through, that the water in those areas has a memory. Would you agree with that? And does anybody else have any other theories?
Well, I'd like to know how many ladies' toilets Richard Felix has actually been into.
Quite a few, I think, actually.
Wow.
And his excuse always, I'm ghost hunting.
Yeah, it's quite funny though, because Richard has said, likely that the toilets weren't always toilets. So it's not, what happened in the toilets to make them haunted. They would have been something else quite often. And yeah, he will say the water theory, the conducting of energy, etc. But he does say that he finds ladies' toilets are more haunted than men's. And when asked, he simply says, because we spend more time in the toilet. So if we're going to put something in there, it's more likely to get us than the guys who are in and out. So that's where the ladies' toilets thing comes from.
Brilliant. Anybody else want to add to that?
No, not really.
No. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Good. So I think that I think that we'll now sort of where you can get hold of, if anybody has any stories. Courtney was the first on the stream beforehand, so I'll start with you, Courtney. How people can get hold of yourself, your resources. I know I mentioned Instagram, but just where people can just hear about you, read about you.
Yeah, so you can pretty much just find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook, all under the handle The Ghoul Guide. Don't know how I managed that, but I did. But Instagram is basically my go-to place. Twitter is kind of like my second, but if you definitely need me, I'll always be on Instagram. And then sometime this month, the Feminine Macabre third volume will be out. And you guys can see my piece on occult games.
And I wanted to do with this because I thought you both yourself, Courtney and Lorien, were writing for Haunted Magazine, and I remembered, I stand corrected because doing the research, it was actually the Feminine Macabre that you have both been put in. So I was getting it slightly wrong. So Lorien, you were second on. So if we go for yourself, then how they can get hold of you and all your wonderful resources.
Well, I like to spread myself out a little bit, and I've got various names, so it's not easy. I'm on Instagram as The Ghost Book, and also Alehouse Haunts on Instagram. On Facebook, my page is now House of Ghosts, which is a rebrand that I've started this year, which is going to encompass The Ghost Book and Alehouse Haunts, and will cover my books and all that kind of things will all be there. So. On Twitter, I'm still The Ghost Book. On YouTube, I was The Ghost Book, but there's nothing really much on there. And I'm setting up a new House of Ghosts on YouTube. Don't really do Twitter that much, so I'm not really much on there. Like Courtney, kind of Instagram. I just wanted to say as well, right for the Haunted Magazine, which the boys will fill in on all the details because I can never remember them. But the two Feminine Macabres, I think, Courtney, you're in both of them, aren't you?
No, I'm only in one.
So Courtney's in the first, I'm in the second, and
we're a perfect pair.
You can get those on Amazon. I think Amanda sells them on her Etsy, which I'm not sure what it is, but anybody in the UK, the easiest place is Amazon if you want to get your hands on those. That's about it, I think.
Also, I didn't say, and I must say as well, a thank you to Amanda for putting me in contact with Courtney. And I have to thank Amelia Cotter for putting me in contact with Amanda to begin with as well. So now moving on to the Haunted Magazine. How are you going to do this? You're going to do a sentence each, when you have this morning and people talking to you and one takes other. So is that how you're going to do it?
Go on, Paul. You can do the Haunted Magazine stuff, then I'll play.
To be honest, I mean, before I forget, happy birthday, Amanda Spookeats. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday. And Courtney and Paul, please I'll be in touch after the show about writing for the magazine. Yes. You're welcome to send something we can talk after. And anybody listening, right? Haunted Magazine. Just search for Haunted Magazine on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we'll pop up. Yeah, as Andy and LJ are modelling.
We'll just put them in the background.
In previous issues. Just search on social media for Haunted Magazine, #Haunted Magazine or at Haunted Magazine. We'll pop up somewhere. If we're meant to chat, then we're meant to chat. Andy, obviously, is also a composer. Search for The Haunted Guy, and you'll see hear all his works and music and everything there too. So it's been a pleasure, Paul, speaking to you and Courtney too, and LJ, and see you tomorrow, Andy, probably.
Yeah. I mean, just one thing I'd like to add on there as well. It is an absolute privilege to be able to work on Haunted Magazine. We get so many good writers through. There's a very good one here. I'm sure there's another two to follow. But I'm just really thrilled to be able to design this product. I also have my own book that I wrote, which is on Amazon, called 72 Minutes in the Woods. And if you're also on Amazon, you can actually search it in Amazon Music, which has the accompanying soundtrack to it. And also, if you've got Spotify or Apple Music or anything like that, just search The Haunted Guy, and that's where all the music side of things comes from. But in terms of the magazine, if you want to get hold of a copy of this, there's more places than ever now for you to get this. We've got our website, which is the main one, www.hauntedmagazineprintshop.com. You've got www.hauntedmagazine.co.uk. We're all on Twitter. I'm the Haunted Guy. You've got Haunted Magazine. We're very easy to get hold of. You can get us on Facebook. You can get us on Instagram. Local car boot sales, weddings, bar mitzvahs. You generally find us anywhere. If you search Haunted Magazine, you will be able to find where we are. And we're also now in W.H. Smith's again, Barnes & Noble in the US, and many, many more.
Absolutely amazing. So that's some fantastic resources and places that people can get their paranormal fix. I will mention myself. Sorry, hello?
Can I just butt in? Sorry, because I'm going to get told off if I don't do this. I totally forgot.
Okay, yeah.
I also run the online chat with Jane Mortimer, my good friend, and our chat is called The Ghost Voice. We're having a small break just now, just because we've got a lot of other things on. So we've given it a month or two, just having a bit of a break from it so we can pour our energy back into it. But yeah, The Ghost Voice. Sorry, Jane.
And yes, I watch the Ghost Voice as well. I absolutely thoroughly enjoy that. So I thoroughly enjoy exploring the afterlife. I enjoy everybody's work. So thank you. A little bit about myself, those you might know, but I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I do past life regressions. So you can either go to my website, paulgoddardnlp.co.uk, or you can look up on YouTube Past Life Regressions with Paul Goddard if you're interested in that. If you're interested in the personal development side of things, then Paul Goddard NLP and hypnotherapy. So if you click on any of those, or I've even just got a Paul Goddard random channel, it's just called Paul Goddard, but you'll see my happy smiling face on those. The NLP one is a shadow of myself, but then you can get to know more about me. And if anybody wants to reach out to me and ask any questions about what I do, please do. Thank you everybody for tonight. There's somebody called Joe. Joe just popped on. Thank you Joe. Thank you everybody tonight. It's been absolutely amazing. I've really totally enjoyed this one, and I was pleased I somehow managed to keep the balls in the air and juggling them. I don't think I dropped too many of them. And yeah, I'd just like to say a big thank you to ETA for allowing me to do this tonight, and also thank you to everybody watching. And I've seen some wonderful comments coming up, so thank you everybody. Thank you to all my friends watching too. Have an outstanding night and all day, whatever time you're watching this. And is everybody okay just to stay around just for 5 minutes after? I don't keep you too long because I realize it's getting late, but just to sort of say goodbye properly, because it's just nice to do it rather than like, right, that's it, I'm off, bye then, close. I did have somebody who the laptop suddenly closed down so quickly after the live, and I thought so I hope that doesn't happen now. Anyway, thank you everyone, and hopefully I'll talk to you. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.